I make it clear, there isn't a narcissist under every bush, but there's too many of them that are out there. If you look at the whole course of the relationship, where there's certain markers all along.
That's Annette Chesney, my guest for today's podcast. Annette is a narcissistic abuse recovery specialist and the founder of the Cinderella No More Academy and Cinderella Success Stories coaching groups. A seasoned speaker, trainer, leadership mentor, Annette has spent years helping women, and now and then a few brave men, find their footing again after narcissistic abuse. She brings a thoughtful blend of emotional healing, personal strengthening, and spiritual grounding to her work, guiding survivors through the inner shifts that untangle old narratives and make room for strength to return. Her message isn't just about getting through hardship, it's about emerging with a steadier heart and a renewed sense of who you were meant to be all along. I hope you'll find something useful in our conversation. I'm Tim Tedder, a licensed counselor and creator of AffairHealing.com. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome to The Recovery Room, a podcast presented by AffairHealing.com.
In this healing place, in this healing place.
Annette, you help people, especially women, recognize when they're in a relationship with someone who's a narcissist. And when they are, you help them understand what it means to break free from that kind of control. Is that an accurate description of what you do?
Yes, in part, for sure. Because some women come to me after they're out of the relationship and they realize, hey, it's been a bit and I'm not better. Because in their mind, they thought, well, once I got away from him, then everything's good and I'll go back to being the woman I was before. Not realizing she will never go back to the woman she was before. There's been too much water under the bridge. But if she learns to heal and handle her heart right and renew her mind, she can become better than she ever was before, and really that's the goal.
One of the common conclusions that betrayed partners jump to as they try to make sense of their partner's actions is that the betrayer must be a narcissist. Are they? Well, I asked Annette to tell me how she defines narcissism.
It's easy to say the definitive stuff is the DSM, the therapists use to diagnose.
Yeah, an official diagnosis of narcissism, yes.
Yeah. So personally, I think that is an inadequate diagnosis criteria that's in there. And you can spot that if they're on the high end, but not so much on the low end, more nuanced with things. And secondly, it's rare that you will actually get a diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder, because first of all, they're not the ones seeking help. It's the victim that's with them.
One of the characteristics of a narcissist, they do not think they have a problem.
That's right. That's right. And not all therapists are well-versed enough to read between the lines and understand that, especially if they haven't been through it before or haven't worked with enough clients who have been through it. Then they tend to rationalize certain other things away. And if the narcissist happens to come to a marriage session, the savvy ones, they can put on a really good show that can fool therapists sometimes. It's usually not their first rodeo. And so they know how to manipulate and they know what they're supposed to be like. They know how to win someone over, how to appeal to them. And so you just can't always count on that. And it's hard because you just feel like you got sucker punched. If you don't have a therapist that's really educated or has experienced this or has really dove into it to understand the nuances of it. And I have had instances where it's backfired for women when they've gone there because now the narcissists align the therapist with them instead, But I have to say, there are some occasional ones that are savvy enough to do it. I experienced one of those kind of therapists who was savvy. It was a marriage counselor and we'd been through some stuff and I'd brought up certain situations and, I just threw up my hands at one point and I was testing a theory because it seemed like no matter what I did, it was never enough. He was trying to make me be basically his Stepford wife. Like I called him out for that. I wasn't allowed to have any, thoughts or needs of my own. I just existed to make him happy. He didn't have that internal stable self-concept. So he was this bucket, with holes in it. And in his mind, a good wife would take away all his bad feelings. He still had bad feelings. Therefore, I wasn't a good wife.
You weren't doing your job.
I wasn't doing my job. Yeah. So we go to this marriage counselor, and this was a Christian marriage counselor, and he was pretty good. So I was testing my theory one time of just like, you know what? I'm just going to spend like the next 3 days. It was like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I am just going to pour into him. He's going to be the belle of the ball, just whatever he wants. I took him to this golf thing that he loved. I made all the food he wanted, took him to his favorite restaurant, just made the whole 3 days all about him. Well, Monday rolls around, and now, it's like back to regular schedules and work life and everything. By Wednesday, he was telling me what a terrible wife I am and how I don't think of anybody but myself, and I don't make him feel special enough, important enough. And so I go to the marriage therapist, we're sitting there, and I describe this scenario. The therapist turns and looks him dead in the eye and says, "At what point is it enough for you?" Without batting an eye, he said, "Well, it's never enough." And that's when I just threw up my hands like, you see what I'm talking about here? I went back later just by myself to talk to him. And he just like stopped me and he looked at me and he goes, "Annette, why are you still with this guy?" And I went, well, and I started giving these like spiritual reasons. And he was like, "And do you think Jesus can't forgive that?" And I went, "You've got a point." I went home and I filed.
Instead of defining narcissism as an all or nothing condition, Annette divides it into 4 categories that she calls the Narcissistic Relationship Spectrum. I asked her to explain the variations of narcissism that show up in relationships. In the DSM, the official guide for therapists and counselors, you have all these diagnoses, these labels, and these criteria of what a person has to be exhibiting or behaviors they need to be showing in order to meet that criteria. It's like either they are or they aren't. Yeah. But I know you're not all yes or all no. There are variations of this. Can you talk a little bit about your spectrum? I think you divided into 4 different categories. Do I remember that correctly?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Because you're right. We're all shades of gray. And I listed just regular people, us regular people, as a category 1. Because we're all capable of being insensitive at times. We can be a jerk and not mean it. But that's kind of the key thing. We have the ability to self-reflect, that we feel bad when we realize that we really hurt somebody in that. It was just having a bad day or whatever. I didn't stop and listen. I kind of blew you off and you were really hurting. I should have paid better attention. I was just navel gazing and thinking about all my stuff, and I didn't stop to consider you in the equation, So we can all be like that. And that's just kind of like the human nature that we've acquired, thank you, Adam and Eve, from that, which we're all capable of carrying, but we do feel bad. We do reflect. We seek to make it right when we've hurt somebody, and we desire to grow. We'll take personal responsibility and we grow. And, the more emotionally mature we become, the better we are at doing those sort of things. But when you cross a line up to what I call a category 2, they don't do that. They don't self-reflect. Self-reflection is scary. Taking responsibility is scary. There isn't the shades of gray that are okay. They're either all wonderful or all not. They don't have this stable self-concept. There's something inside of them that's just empty. And they're always like a scared little boy or scared little girl, functioning off of fear and insecurity, no matter how, grown up they seem to be or how competent they are in certain arenas. Deep inside, they're still that scared little kid that's stuck at about age 8, give or take. They have emotional tantrums and they carry on. They can't stand it if you confront them about something. They'll deny it, they'll duck and dodge, they'll flip it back so it's somehow you that did it. And the thing is that this is a pervasive way of being. That's the mistake that a lot of people make, is they'll just look at the incident in front of their face. And that's where they come up with these, like plausible justifications of why they may have acted that way or whatever. And what you have to do is take a 10,000-foot view and look at the overall pattern over time. Has anything improved during that time? And rule of thumb, if you're long-term with a person like this, they tend to get worse as they age. They get meaner as they age because, you lose your looks and the ways that you could charm before. And, that's kind of a category 2. They can be very hurtful and destructive, but it's not in a necessarily a premeditated way. It's more of a knee-jerk reaction born out of fear and emptiness and survival mode, all the time. They take their cues from those around them. So that's why they have to have you pouring into their bucket all the time. But a category 3, when you move the line, it shifts. There's an important shift because now it is calculated. Now it is deliberate. Now they're looking for chinks in your armor. They're looking for your fears and insecurities. They're looking for your hopes and dreams, the big achievement you just had at work, because they want to stomp on it. And sometimes it's because they don't want you to shine more than them. So they have to bring you down. Sometimes they do it just for fun because they are empty inside. So they're seeking a lot of entertainment all the time. Category 3 and nearly always with a category 4. To them, entertainment is power and control and having the power over your emotions, that they can bring you from happy and laughing. They can bring you to tears in minutes. And they do that sort of thing for kicks. It's really sadistic and it's sad.
Well, how does it get worse than category 3 then?
So take all that with category 3. When we move up to category 4, all those things are amplified. And I list like 10 different types. They're not clinical terms. It's lay people's normal words. So in a category 4, I have it split in like the bottom half of category 4 would be like sociopath. And the top half of a category 4 would be psychopath. These are the ones that go scorched earth on you if you dare to try to break away. They want nothing more than to destroy you. They will do whatever it takes to leave you penniless, homeless, take your kids away, whatever. And if you go in that realm of psychopath, you could be in physical danger. What they'll do is limited only by what they think they can get away with.
That's scary stuff.
It's very scary stuff. They make movies out of those kind of people.
I've seen some of those.
Yeah.
How often in your work do you encounter infidelity as part of the narcissist pattern?
Frequently. Very frequently. So narcissists, a lot of times, they don't like anyone to get too close. They're a stage actor, in everything they do. So they can play whatever persona they want for approval, to build trust and rapport, whatever they need to do. And especially like when you get in that category 3 realm, then it's extremely calculated that they're doing this. They know exactly what they're doing. And if someone gets too close and starts seeing through them, starts calling them out on it, then because they are so empty, they need to move on to the next one. It's going to fill their bucket. So they'll move on to someone else. They'll start the flirtation, the titillation of the infatuation thing. It's like a drug. And so they want to enjoy that. They want to carry on. And sometimes they just like the thrill of, ooh, will I get caught? And they're so bold about it at times that they'll even become more and more obvious just to see how long will it take her to notice. And then, let's pick a fight. Yeah, bring it on, the fight. I want to, because now I'm going to rip you to shreds. It's really ugly. And, with these kind of people, there's a lot of dual diagnosis stuff that goes on too. So it's not unusual to have addictive behaviors of one form or another, and affairs and, sexual addiction, all this kind of stuff going on. It's really, really common.
I encounter a lot of betrayed partners who believe that their cheating partners are narcissists. And sometimes I think they're just trying to find a label that explains what's going
Yeah.
on. But sometimes they're right. I mean, sometimes they are
Yeah.
in a relationship with someone who is showing the characteristics of, your stage 2. Especially, I see that a lot. And I think it's helpful to understand, there's some underlying things that are informing that behavior, not just the infidelity, but all these other things I've been experiencing that kind of have probably made them more susceptible to this choice as well. So it can be part of their healing to figure that out too. You said sometimes you're working with women, sometimes men, who are early in the process of trying to figure out what's wrong with my relationship. Why aren't the things I'm trying working? Do you ever find that you work with someone that's in a relationship with a narcissist and they begin to become healthy? They begin to recognize their autonomy and their ability to express things in a way that is taking more of responsibility for themselves. And there's a freedom in that. Does it ever result in changing the environment in a way that invites a narcissistic partner to reflect and consider, and they actually begin to change? I would think that might be a little rare, but I'm just wondering if you ever hear stories of that happening.
I wish. I mean, it's a bit of a unicorn if that would happen. I actually have one of my coaching groups is living well while staying. And it only works with a category 2 narcissist, higher up, no shot. But it's when they come to an understanding of this is the reality, everything. Yes, I'm dealing with a category 2 narcissist. So of course there's grieving and, there's like a whole slew of emotions that go along with that because, well, this is my marriage. And they have reasons that are valid to them why this is not a time that I'm going to leave, whether it's, personal convictions or sometimes there's minor children in the home and there's lots of things to consider in terms of, it's a double-edged sword. I stay here where I can be the buffer and I'm present, or we divorce and the court orders 50% over with, you know what I mean? So it's just a lot of things
I would imagine
consider.
that is a challenge because that's a choice of sacrifice. They're saying, I am going to be willing to stay in a relationship that is not going to be fulfilling in the way that I would want to be loved. And yet there are reasons I'm going to choose to stay here. And by the way, I know it'd be different with category 3 and 4 as you're going to describe, but if I could find that category 2 person, that category 2 narcissist guy, especially, that has been used to just calling that normal, calling that good, defending himself and never changing. Sometimes I catch people in the middle of crisis, and in those rare occasions where someone like that is at least beginning to ask the question or consider the possibility that maybe it's me, I want to work with that guy. I mean, I want to try to get into that little opening and say, yeah, it probably is you. Can you be curious about that? Can we talk about that? Because I always want to have hope that, even in the roughest patterns, there's a possibility for redemption and a possibility for change. But I understand that it's probably rare.
I actually, before I had the kind of depth of understanding that I do now. So it happened to be in that relationship that I described earlier, So I have a certain skill set that I was able to kind of mirror some of the things that were being said and very gently and graciously compare and contrast, fact versus fiction. And for just a moment, there was a crack and he saw it. And he just stopped in his tracks, ran into the other room and disappeared. And I was like, He's like, just leave me alone. I was, okay, fair enough. I went over and sat on the couch, Half an hour later, I still hadn't seen him. And I went looking. I found him in a closet, face down, with his, face in his arms. And I walked up to him and I said, what's going on here? And he goes, get away from me. I'm a monster. He just flipped to the other side. And I was like, okay, come on, let's talk about this. That's not accurate either. Let's just try to work through this. I am all about resolving, And he was just leave me alone for a little bit. I'll come out. I said, okay. Sat back down on the couch. Well, he walked out And that brief shining moment where he dared to consider himself, the door slammed shut on that. And then he came out with a vengeance at me,
Yeah,
like
it's a scary
shoot the
thing.
messenger.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
scary thing to step into that
Yeah.
space and be honest about ourselves. But
Yeah. But in this group that I was telling you about, the Living Well While Staying, so these women, not only do we work through the grief, but part of that group that we do is another thing is learning strategies, because you have to understand what makes a narcissist tick. It's all in reference to them, right? With a category 2. And so if there's something you want, if you just approach directly, you're probably going to get grief. But if you can reframe it in such a way that the narcissist sees that there's a benefit to him of some sort, then he's more likely to be cooperative. So there's some savvy strategies to learn. And at the same time, for her, as she comes to terms with this marriage is never going to be what I hoped. And does that mean I just sit here and that's it? I just sit out back and eat worms for the rest of? No, you have to find a life for you, a life that's meaningful and full of purpose. And I have watched these women. I'm coming to the end of one of the groups right now. And matter of fact, before recording, I was just on a call with someone as we're wrapping up. And we were talking about her growth from the beginning to where she is now and how things change. Her whole countenance had shifted. And she's gone out there and she's developed this life for herself, and it's just really amazing. So it is possible to have a life. It's always work. They always need extra support and coaching, because one half of the equation of the relationship has not changed.
Annette, your program has a very clear Christian influence and message in it. And you approach the issue from not only a social and psychological perspective, but from a spiritual one as well.
Yes.
If there's someone listening to this who does not have a strong spiritual background or perhaps comes from a different kind of spiritual background, would this program be something for them?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I am very specific that we do invite God into the process. And we do make some references to scripture. And sometimes they learned that what they thought certain scriptures meant is not actually what that means going through it, but they find a lot of comfort in bringing God into the middle of that. So can you walk through some things without it? Yes, but it's much harder.
Then what I hear you saying is that if someone's listening to this and there's a lot that they're identifying with, but maybe they don't come from that background, they certainly wouldn't be someone that would be excluded from what you're offering, but they need to come at least with an openness or curiosity about that spiritual aspect of all of this.
Yes. Yeah. You can pick and choose the aspects that you're comfortable, because maybe you're just not at that place yet. Maybe you're just exploring. You're in a discovery phase yourself. I've worked with people who are at that place, and I work with them one-on-one instead of putting them in the groups, because then I can meet them where they're at.
Annette and I talked more about her work with Christian women, the 4-session workshop she presents in churches, the experience of women who are in her group, and how the church's response to narcissistic patterns in marriages is sometimes problematic. I've included that part of our discussion as a bonus audio clip available on the episode page at affairhealing.com/podcasts/034. That link is provided in the episode notes. Would you like some free resources or help from Annette? She tells you what's available. I have a copy of your Narcissistic Relationship Spectrum guide. It's very helpful, has a lot of information in it. You've given me a link that I can pass on. It'll be in the episode notes, but listeners can go get that for free.
Yeah.
They can just go to your website and get that. I think the URL is AnnetteChesney.com/spectrum. I will put the link in the episode notes. Where else would you direct people if they want to find out more about you or the services that you offer, how they can get involved? What should they do?
Well, 2 ways that would be really easy. Of course, there's my website, but I would encourage them to just reach out to me via email. And it's just Annette@AnnetteChesney.com. We can chat a bit. And if it seems like something that we'd want to take the next step, we can hop on a Zoom call. I do a complimentary call just to talk with them a little bit and find out what are their goals for themselves. What are they dealing with? What's worked and hasn't worked for them, and what might be a good fit.
I'll include all of that information in the episode notes so they can easily get a hold of you. I appreciate your work and giving time to explain what you do, and hopefully this has been helpful to listeners out there.
Thanks so much for the opportunity to be here.
Fade